Hello, guys, and welcome back to Relevant Founders, brought to you by Relevant Software. Relevant is an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers world-class standard products for Fortune 500 companies and promising startups. Today, our next guest on the show is Fatima, founder and CEO at Quill Inc. and CoHost. Fatima, hello, how are you?
Hi, it's so great to be connected, and I'm glad we're finally able to do this.
Likewise. Fatima, what I'd love to do, obviously, we can't start any show without getting to know you a little bit better. There's lots of content about you out there. So what I want you to tell me is just talk to me a little bit about you and tell me something different. Tell me something that not many people would know about. Let's talk about your business experience.
So I was born and raised in the Middle East. I'm from a small country out east called Oman. Not a lot of people know of Oman. They usually think I'm either making it up or I'm talking about Amman, Jordan. Oman is in between Yemen and Dubai, the UAE. And it's like a really beautiful country. I moved to North America when I was just turned 17 and really just wanted a better life and wanted to pursue an education and a career. And when I got here, I went to university, obviously, and I did the corporate circuit for a little bit before I joined the startup world. And that's when I really fell in love with contributing to startups' bottom line. So eventually knew that I always wanted to be an entrepreneur and love solving business pain points and challenges. And I'm a salesperson by background. And so for me, being able to measure the ROI on bottom line is like what really gets me excited. So for a few years, I worked with startups to help them go from, zero revenue, pre-revenue to a few million MRR. And then eventually was like, maybe it's time to do it for myself. And that's when I launched Quill.
Nice. Tell me quickly there. So Oman, you said, yeah? Oman.
Yes.
Oman. And what is your mother tongue then? Because if it's there, I guess English is not your mother tongue, but your English is mother tongue like.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. So I get asked all the time, like, how do you speak English so well? Because like, obviously I wasn't born and raised in North America. And to that, I would say a few things. One, I went to an American international school. And so I am a third culture kid. So even though I was born and raised in Oman, I'm not actually Omani. That's where I identify from because I was like raised there my whole life, but my parents are actually Pakistani. And so I was in a bit of a unique situation where I don't really identify with anywhere as home. Like I have a Canadian passport. I grew up in Oman my whole life. I have parents who are from Pakistan. My dad was technically from India because, before the partition, there was no Pakistan. So, I don't really have a home. And so when people ask me, where are you from or what's your background? I'm not really sure how to answer that because it's so nuanced and layered. My mother tongue, I speak a few different languages. So I obviously speak English. I speak Urdu, which is the Urdu and Hindi, which are like the primary languages in Southeast Asia, which my parents are from. And then, of course, became very, comfortable with Arabic when I was back home in Oman. And then when I eventually moved to Canada, also took on French because that's the primary language here. So, a few different languages in my portfolio, but I would say comfortable with all, master of none.
That is very nice. How have these languages, have you been able to use those in order to wow an investor or, speak to someone at a place and they think, oh my God, and then you manage to close something?
Well, it's interesting. I don't know if languages have had a huge part in that, but the one thing that I will say is being a third culture kid, because you don't identify with one place, most people who like yourselves are also, third culture people and adapt to different environments are usually very avid travelers. So I've been all over the world and been to so many different places. And I guess here's the fun fact. I've been to, probably almost 70 countries, which honestly perspective is not a lot for some people and it could be a lot for others. And I'm also an avid diver and I like to plan a lot of my trips around diving. And so oftentimes I'll know like cultural nuances or fun facts about random places in the world. And people will usually be surprised when I'm talking to someone from a different culture or background, why or how I know this small town in their region or certain phrases in their language or, parts of their cuisine and food and just little things like that. So I would say just in general, I'm like very grateful for my upbringing.
Tell me, how did you come up with the idea to build CoHost? Where did it start?
Yeah, so our team, like I mentioned, Quill is it's a full service podcast production agency, and we work with Fortune 500 brands like Microsoft, Salesforce, Expedia, PwC. We launched their podcasts from the ground up, and we had been doing that for many years and realized that there were a lot of different pain points and challenges within the industry of understanding who your listener was, where your audience was coming from, and then from there, growing your audience as well. We spent a lot of time working with brands to help them understand the ROI of their podcast. And I would say that the challenge, because we were trying to help them understand the ROI of the podcast, we spent a lot of time behind the scenes pulling together analytics reports, trying to find out the gender, the age, household income of the person who was listening, what companies do they maybe work for, are people listening all the way through to the end of the content, as many metrics as we possibly could put together, just to be able to show our clients, are we targeting the right listeners? Firstly, do you even have enough listeners? So are people resonating with your content? Are we targeting the right listeners? And then from there, helping them justify the creation of new production budgets. I think one thing that people don't realize is that there's 2.5 million podcasts that are out there in the ether. Only 18% of those podcasts are active, which speaks to the fact that so many people will launch content and create shows, not realizing A, how hard it is from a technical aspect to create a good quality show, and two, also not understanding that it's hard to find your audience and grow your audience. So they stop very quickly. And so eventually, we didn't really have anything that was out there in the market that was servicing our needs. We spoke to a few different hosting platforms that were really focused towards indie content creators and networks. And we really wanted something for professional, smart podcasters. Chartable was sort of taking on it for a little while with campaign attribution data, and then eventually got bought out by Spotify, and we know how that went. But other than Chartable and Podsites, nobody was really playing in this space. So we just decided to launch our own platform that would help you host and measure your show analytics on a premium level, as well as help you find your audience as well. And so it's like a one-stop shop, and I hate using that term, but it really is platform that really allows you to do transcriptions and websites and campaign attribution data. So you no longer need to use Chartable, and additional analytics, which we pull from Apple and Spotify. And it's obviously a work in progress, and we're still iterating on the product every day. But I think what we've created is a really consolidated version of what like little bits of platforms can do here and there.
How has it been with the uptake? So since when you started compared to like now, are you seeing people coming to you because they're saying, as you said, so many people are starting podcasts and they're just falling off? Are more people coming to you now? Have you seen this trend where people are starting and think, oh, I need help. I need to do something here?
Yeah, definitely. We actually officially built the platform a while back. Like we've been around for, at least a year. So we already have a very significant pipeline of customers using our platform. It was only this year when we decided to do a hard launch and open it up to the world. Because initially we built it for our agency. We were our own case study, which was kind of cool because the customer pipeline was already there on the agency side. And we built this product for ourselves. And then we just saw so much value from it. It made our life so much easier, and we're the customer as well. And our clients got so much value out of it that we started getting a lot of inbound requests from brands saying that they heard about us through a friend or another company that they're partnered with. And is there any way that they could try our platform? So I basically decided to open it up to the world this year, and we have seen a huge uptake in consumers who are using our platform to really understand who's listening to their show, getting premium analytics, and then also from there being able to measure where their downloads are coming in from, campaign attribution data, so they can really double down on what's working. And we've promised our users that we're going to continue adding features that help you find new audiences. So right now we do SEO formatted transcripts, so all of your episodes automatically transcribed. We also do SEO formatted websites, so everything is formatted to help you rank over time on Google search pages. Our transcripts automatically push out onto those websites as well, so that everything is consolidated in one place, your episodes, your social channels, the different links to Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you want to listen. And then the transcripts for accessibility purposes as well. In the next couple of months, we're looking to add a few more features. So one is loyal listeners, being able to show you how many of the people that are coming to your podcast are staying on for future episodes.
Nice.
We are also adding, we're working with Edison right now to report on age, gender, household income. So additional like profile information. We're the only platform in the world right now that reports on average consumption rate. We pull that from Apple's dashboard. So we'll show you where people are listening to or where they're dropping off to help you work on your content a little bit better. And then we're also looking on adding onto the website like a feedback engagement section where guests or listeners can comment on the content and speak to the host directly about things that they'd like to see, change, any form of engagement possible, surveys, just so that they can connect more with their audience.
Let's start right back from the beginning. How did you find your co-founders? Where did you go? What did you do? Were these people that you knew in the industry before? How did you bring you guys together to build this?
So actually, I don't have a co-founder. I'm a solo founder. We do have a really big team. So we're almost at, I like have a hard time remembering, we're at 20 employees now. So we launched officially in 2020 as Quill. So it's not been that long. And I launched as a solo founder. Yes, we launched actually the March of the pandemic is when we launched. So the world shut down 3 days later is like right after our first client. So luckily podcasting is recession proof or has proven to be. So we are really grateful that we weren't too impacted by the pandemic. And we were in the fact that we were doing a conference out in LA called the Listen In Conference. And we had the entire event planned for corporate brands. And then we had to, obviously cancel it last minute. But I would say regardless of that, our industry has been pretty recession proof. So we're really happy about that. I didn't launch with a founder. I was like a sole founder. And I would say that I ran another agency before Quill where we focused on content for Fortune 500 brands. So the first thing that I did was bring on a COO from that company that I used to work with. She's like a operations guru, and I knew that like the backbone of every successful company is a strong operations lead. And then actually the next set of customers that are employees that came through were I acquired a production company. So it was a boutique podcasting production agency called Origins Media House. They specialized in branded content on a smaller scale, but they were industry experts. They weren't the business experts, but they had the expertise of like the industry. They understood analytics, they understood data, they understood the importance of like technical sound engineering, how to make shows come to life, and the back end of how everything works. So through that acquisition, we acquired 3 folks who are now our head of sound engineering, our head of product, and our head of marketing.
Okay.
And then from there, it was an iterative process. I hired a CTO and then a product designer and then our, head of production. And it's just been a very iterative process. And now we're 20.
Wow. So tell me, so obviously you got your CEO, COO from Quill. So you obviously had an understanding how she worked and how amazing she was to obviously bring co-hosts forward. What about your CTO? How did you search for your CTO? What kind of requirements?
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I could talk about this all day. Hiring for technical skill sets is one of the most challenging things that I have gone through as a founder, and I'm still going through it. We've been actually on the search for a full stack developer. In fact, if you know anyone, I would love any recommendations. Anywhere in the world. Like we are not picky. We'll hire from Ukraine, India, Philippines, the US, Canada. We're looking everywhere, and we just want somebody who is reliable and a culture fit, full-time, and we ideally would like prefer somebody with Ruby on Rails experience. And we've been looking for 6 months, and it's a needle in a haystack, and we're willing to pay above market value. So it's not like we're startup salaries. Absolutely not. We have really big budgets for salaries. In fact, I would say we invest a really big portion of our profits back into our team in retention. And so far, none of our employees have left. Everyone has been here since day one. We've had 0 turnover because we really invest heavily in our culture. The challenge has been attracting and recruiting technical hires. So CTO, I got really lucky. I knew our CTO from my former life. We had met at an industry event and sort of kept in touch organically. And when I knew that I needed a CTO, he was like the first person that I reached out to, and he's amazing. I absolutely adore him. He's more of a business partner than a CTO at this point. And then the rest of the folks, I would say, came in mostly through my network or didn't have any product experience, but decided to move into product experience. And we brought in external support to help level up their skills. But it's really challenging. I would say that it's looking for a needle in a haystack. I mean, these folks can go work at companies like Shopify for double the pay, half the hours. And, we just can't compete with companies like Shopify in the market. I mean, at the end of the day, we are a startup, even though we're willing to get really creative with unlimited vacation, remote work, flexibility. There's just not that many developers out there, and the ones that are out there prefer to work for companies like Shopify, where they don't have to do too much innovation and problem solving and get paid double of what we can afford to pay. So unfortunately, that has been a really big struggle, and I'm grateful for the product team that I have right now. There's about 6 of us on the co-host side, but still looking for talent. And I think we're at a point now where we're going to start offshoring.
Have you not found, because obviously so many engineers, obviously money is important for everyone, we can't avoid it,
Yes.
So many engineers, they love the challenge, they need the challenge, they love the puzzle that goes with their job. What has been, obviously, you're talking about salary challenges, can't challenge, obviously, Spotify, these kind of places, but what are you going to do to try find that person? Obviously, you said about culture fit as well. What is the culture? Let's start here. What is the culture fit for working at Quill, to work at CoHost? What is the culture fit?
Yeah, so we're a team that is all about work-life balance. So we actually have a law in our employee handbook or policies doc, which is we do not work after 5 o'clock and evenings and weekends and holidays. We don't. And if you work overtime, it's not with a badge of honor because you don't get extra points at this company. So balance is really important to us. We work really hard between the hours of 9 to 5, the 40 hours a week. We work really hard. We're a team that likes to work hard, but we're also a team that likes to play hard. So that, I would say, is our culture. I mean, we get essentially unlimited vacation. I would say minimum, we have minimum 5 weeks a year, which I know in Europe doesn't sound like a lot, but in North America, that's unheard of. People usually take 2 weeks max. And even that is not always. And so, we have an unlimited vacation policy, but to make sure that my team is taking vacation, I shut the company down for 2 weeks at Christmas. So 2 weeks were closed, 1 week in the summer. And then I force people to take at least 2 weeks of personal time over the year. So that's minimum 5 weeks. And, I would say that one big thing that we look for, and this is probably the number one thing that I need. I don't care if you're the smartest developer. I don't care if you are not the best problem solver, don't have all the answers, because we can train you, we can work with you. There's a learning curve and we'll grow with you. The number one thing I care about is if you're reliable. What we're finding right now is so many developers that apply for jobs won't show up for job interviews, won't show up to the interviews, or they'll cancel last minute, or they'll take a week to respond to emails. And to me, I don't care how talented your resume is. If you don't have the basic principles of being reliable and I can't depend and trust you, then it's a no from me. And I would say that, we're playing the long game. We really invest in our employees and we don't want anyone to leave. So once you're here, you're part of the family, and we'll do everything that we possibly can to keep you, retain you, and make sure you're happy proactively, not reactively. And so my one non-negotiable is that's the only thing I ask for, is that I want somebody that I can trust and is reliable.
How do you do that? How do you make sure that your team members are happy? How are you proactive with it? Have you got monthly meetings, weekly meetings? How do you make sure that they're not going to go anywhere?
Yeah, so it's a combination of a lot of things. One is every year, and we don't do the 2% raises for one. Everyone gets at least a 10% raise every year, or a bonus of some sort, where their compensation is significantly
Everyone
increasing.
listening to this now, they're going quick.
Yes, totally. Please, if you're a technical developer, full stack, please apply. We're really looking right now. And so that's the first thing. We don't do 2% raises. Everyone gets a minimum of a 10% raise. So you jump really quickly at our company because again, we believe in investing in our employees, rather than going out and hiring the $300,000 C-suite executive. I would rather just make sure that my existing team continues to have the skills to level up and gets paid well, so that they continue to stay on and don't want to go elsewhere. So that's the first thing I would say, compensation. Of course, the vacation thing is huge here. Like work-life balance, not working overtime. We do quarterly events in person. So we are a remote team, but what we do is we try to do quarterly events where we fly our remote employees in for the event as well. So for example, in July, we're doing a full day boat cruise and dinner and drinks, and we're flying in our like West Coast employees so we can all be together in person. We like to do that at Christmas as well, where we're like making sure that for our holiday parties, all of the employees are here together. We're in the process right now of planning an international travel retreat for our core team. So just like really putting the employees first. And then I would say the last thing is making sure that everyone on the team has mentorship. So if I can't provide it to you because I don't have the skill set, we're really big on education budgets and bringing in external support. So our head of marketing is paired with a fractional CMO that we pay on retainer, who's like, a growth marketing ninja who works with Ali, our head of marketing, to help level her skills up to CMO level. So not, and same with product and same with like other areas of our business. So not only are people getting compensated well and getting to learn a lot, they're also getting to advance in their roles. So I think that's another thing that people really appreciate here is when you join, you really not just with compensation, but you make advances in skills.
There you're talking about obviously 6 months be searching and you're even ready to go offshore. Why and what has been your desire to keep everything in-house up to now?
There are a couple of there are definitely areas of the business that are outsourced, like the fractional CPO and CMO is outsourced, and we work with external accounting teams and lawyers and HR teams. So all of our vendors on special services are definitely all outsourced. The reason that I'm hesitant to outsource and keep everything in-house is because I think the importance of business continuity, continuum, essentially. I want people to feel like a part of the internal team, full-time, long-term.
Right, if you're putting that much effort into them as well.
Exactly. We're putting a lot of time and effort into them, and a lot of revenue goes into our employees. So for me, it's just like contractors are, not dedicated to one company. I think contractors are really helpful when you want somebody to come in for a certain period of time to help elevate your in-house team. I think now what we're starting to think about is so far all of our employees have been North America, across the US and Canada. And now we're starting to think about, okay, well, we're having a really hard time here finding technical talent. Maybe we should think about hiring offshore. And it doesn't mean that they're a contractor. We can hire a full-time employee offshore. It's just a different time zone and, culturally from a different part of the world. But I mean, I love diversity in thought and perspective and background. So I think it's great. We've just never done it. It's never been we've never really been forced to do it. Most of our hires have come in through my network. But now we're in a unique position where we have to look externally and say, okay, maybe we should go to Ukraine and find a full stack developer, or India has some really great development talent. Philippines is too.
How would the time difference, how would you tackle that? The time difference is obviously one of those things that may be a struggle. How would you tackle it?
Yeah, it definitely will be a struggle. It's something that we've talked about, especially because we are such a collaborative team and we're either working on EST or PST time zone. So it's definitely still a work in progress. I think that people ultimately who are not working within our time zone have to set their own boundaries. If I'm in India and I'm working when everyone else is asleep, but awake when people start working, you have to be really mindful of responding to emails when it's your working schedule and Slack messages. I think as a team, we really have to be mindful if we have employees in other parts of the world that there isn't too much overlap. And so delegating projects that don't need to be collaborative. So development is super easy to do that because it's not really a group activity, or when you're coding, it's you're working in silos usually. So I would say that is really on the development side. There's certain roles I would never hire in a different time zone other than North American time zones, because I know it just wouldn't work. Operations, if your clients are in PST or EST, our customers are, you need someone to be around. So obviously customer service, operations, production, those roles, sales even, which is really my job at the company to bring in all the revenue. None of us could work in, a CET time zone, but a developer absolutely could, a product designer absolutely could, a marketer could as well. So it just depends on the role.
when you are outsourcing, which part were you outsourcing so far, and what has been like you said the positives of outsourcing, yes? You mentioned the positive. What have been your hesitations with outsourcing as well?
I think the number one con to outsourcing is just that nobody is going to care as much as your internal employees. Like that's just what it comes down to. Is if it's a vendor, you can get many different skill sets provided to you, but at the end of the day, they're not dedicated to your business solely. And so being a priority can be a challenge. And oftentimes, as someone who has run an agency myself and is still running an agency, certain clients end up getting prioritized over other clients. And we feel that with vendors too. And so, because we're all about the long game and having people stay long term, rather than working with a vendor and outsourcing, which is usually has a shelf life, I would just prefer to maybe hire someone who isn't as great as a full service agency, but is willing to invest the time and effort into yes, exactly, leveling up. And it's funny, my favorite example is Allison, who is our head of marketing. She's our director of growth marketing. She was one of the people that I acquired through Origins Media House, the acquisition that we made. She was one of the co-founders. And when she joined, her skill set was community management. And I came to her and I said, the business does not need a community manager. What we need is a growth marketer. We need a data-driven growth marketer. And if you are interested in putting in the time and effort, I will bring in the resources to help you grow and help you level up to eventually becoming a data-driven chief marketing officer. Your earning potential will be way more, and you will become invaluable to any startup or business that you work for, because it's such a unique skill set and it's such a mandatory skill set. I feel like, not that community management isn't important, but I would say when you're working at a startup or a high growth scale up, the data-driven growth tactics are really what's going to help you scale and become so crucial to a company's success. And she absolutely took on the challenge. And I brought on a fractional CMO who's actually still with us. We love working with him. His name is Dave Haber, and he had, years and years of experience being a CMO and scaling companies that are both B2B and B2C. And he's worked really hard with her over the last couple of years to level up her skill set. And today she's one of the smartest marketers that I know. And she's transformed our company, completely transformed our company. I don't care about your fancy resume with bells and whistles. I care about your attitude. I care about your reliability. Can I trust you? And do you have the work ethic? And those things matter to me way more than the bells and whistles and the fluff that comes with interviews these days. I rarely look at resumes, to be honest. I now 100% rely on my instinct and gut and the conversations that I have with people. And I'm pretty transparent about what I'm looking for. And it's not to say that investing in Ali was a cheap was cheap by any means. I mean, the amount of money that I've spent on Dave to help level up her skills, I was, essentially paying maybe what could have been a full salary for a fractional full-time CMO. But my argument here is I know Ali will never leave. I know now she is a lifer. She's invested in the company and she's going to be here at the finish line when we exit or IPO one day. And that to me is way more valuable than, instant gratification, instant results. If it takes us a little bit longer, I'm happy to wait. I'm happy to have our growth be less linear, but make sure that our turnover is basically negligent and our retention is 100%, which till today it still is. Nobody's left.
We're going to go on to now, we're going to talk a little bit about challenges, but you were talking there obviously about work-life balance. And this is something, I've got to be honest, it does surprise me from you, only because Fatima, I saw that you're doing so much, you've got so much going on. How are you managing to do all of this at one time? And how are you actually giving yourself that work-life balance? Because if I look at it in this way, where, you've got those crazy guys would be Steve Jobs, the classic ones, Elon Musk, who, from what we understand, they don't have a work-life balance, which is creative its success. How are you giving yourself this work-life balance and managing all of this work at the same time?
Yeah, so I'd be lying if I said that work-life balance was something that I practiced my entire life. And I didn't. In my 20s, I was that person that, like Gary Vee says, hustle 24/7. Life is a race. If you don't get to the finish line first, somebody else will beat you to it, and go, go, go. And I look back and I think, but how ridiculous, I think it's so unfortunate how we have so many tech idols and tycoons that we idolize, and yet they're setting this example that you need to be hustling and working 24/7 and sacrificing your personal growth and, work-life balance and mental health to, get to the finish line faster than anybody else. I mean, I guess I would ask myself two questions, like, how do you define success? Over time, my definition of success has become being a well-rounded person.
Mhm.
And being a well-rounded person means to me having an exceptional career, but also having an exceptional personal life and great relationships and having, a couple pets and being physically very active and fit. And just there's so many things for me that define being successful, traveling every month or every 2 months and going somewhere new in the world. I could not define success with the bank balance number or, how much revenue my company is making today. And, I look back at my life over my 20s and I worked so hard and I was always go, go, go. I don't remember the nights that I work late and why. I don't remember the reasons why I missed out on certain trips because my career was more important or my work was more important. But I do remember the trips that I missed and I regret. I do remember the parties that I stayed out late. I do remember the relationships that I built and, the friends who I'm still close to today. And actually, over time, what brings value and meaning to your life is community and a sense of purpose. And yes, you get a part of that from your career and your work, but there's so much more that comes from externally that you really need to prioritize and focus. So for me,
Switch it off then, Fatima. Fatima, can you just switch it off when it hits 5 o'clock and you've got that work to do? Are you able just to stop? That's for tomorrow.
yeah, I mean, I would say I'm still a founder. Sometimes like something urgent will happen at 8 or 9 o'clock that'll need my attention for 5 minutes. If I happen to see it, then I'll tend to it. But if I don't, then I like to tell people that my out of office when I'm on vacation is if this is an emergency, remember that we're doing podcast PR, not ER, but feel free to tweet at me using hashtag interrupt your vacation. And I stand by that. I'm not a neurosurgeon. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a child pediatrician. Like, what could I possibly be doing in this world? Like, let's have a little bit of perspective here. What could I possibly be doing that is so urgent that cannot wait until 8 o'clock the next morning? Like what am I doing as a media tech entrepreneur that couldn't wait until 9 a.m. the next day? So I think in our heads, we make things so trivial and we're in our worlds and our little bubbles, and there's a world so much bigger out there, and not realizing that nothing that we're doing right now is urgent other than our health and our happiness, and the people around us are happy and healthy.
Let's start with the challenges that you have had from being a female. Have you had any? Because I had a few other females on the podcast and they said, no, not in the tech industry, no. Have you?
That's really interesting that their answer was no. I would love to talk to these people and see what they're doing differently, because I think it's inevitable that being a female BIPOC, but really just female identifying founder, comes with a unique set of challenges, and it requires you to work that much harder and be that much more creative when it comes to raising capital or bringing in revenue for your business. And personally, I've always had to be the hardest working person in the room, and I've had to be over prepared for every opportunity, because being over prepared means it comes with confidence. And I do think that women are held to a harsher standard, and people are very critical of our work. And there are a lot of unconscious biases out there, whether that's in the VC world or even women, being biased against other women about not being, equitable to men in terms of raising funding or leading successful companies. And I think that, whether or not people say yes or no, they've experienced bias in the workplace, the stats sort of speak for themselves. Like, we don't we can sit here and speculate all we want, but really, do we look at the amount of female founders who've been able to raise capital compared to their male counterparts? The numbers are pretty astounding. And actually, I recently wrote an article for Canadian Business about, I don't know if you read the article in New York Times about the Glossier founder, and it was like the demise of girl bosses. And the entire article paints women in such a negative light, and how essentially women can't raise, and this is a New York Times article that was published 2 weeks ago, and how women can't necessarily, this is 2022, this was 2 weeks ago, this was the New York Times. And if you read the article, the underlying message became about gender. It wasn't about this like one female identifying founder who, you know, had a crash, and Glossier was the company that she led. It was like generalized, like this is all women, and this is, you know, vindicating all of the biases that male VC investors have when deciding who to invest in. And so I actually wrote a counter response to that article about how women founders deserve a retrial, because there have been the demise of many male founders, Uber and WeWork, and there's just so many examples out there. And yet still today, men are held at such a different standard to women. And it's something that you experience at every sort of step of the career stage, not even just as a founder. And so, yes, I do think I've had to work harder than the person next to me. And I am okay with that, because I think it's helped to get me where I am.
Okay, let's go on to the next challenge, tech challenge. Since you've started, what has been the biggest tech challenge you have faced?
Tech challenge. Well, aside from attracting diversity, aside from attracting like tech talent from a CTO and product designer and developer perspective, I would say we're actually very early adopters, and like I would say generally we're like a millennial savvy workplace. And you know, we like to use a lot of like the new and up and coming software. So obviously we're on Slack, but Asana, ClickUp, Notion, we're like very big on a lot of the tech tools that are out there to help our team work collaboratively together to solve business challenges. We also are a full service production agency, so we have to work with a lot of people around the world who aren't so necessarily tech savvy. And given that we're a remote company, just like, you know, being able to walk people through tech setups or mic setups, or you know, troubleshooting any tech issues for recording their podcast, that's always really fun. But luckily, that's not my job. Luckily, we have a whole team of sound engineers who are very patient, a lot more patient than I would ever be. And can walk our clients through some of those challenges, like a mouse is on your keypad and not on your screen, or how to plug in the microphone.
Explain it to me like I'm 5. Yeah, this kind of.
Yes, like take the plug and plug it into the, you see a little prong for your microphone, like you and put it in there, and it's like literally walking someone through, like it's like walking my parents through anything technical. They're in their late 70s and definitely not technically savvy, and a lot of our clients are like that too. So just because our team is savvy doesn't mean our clientele are.
Let me ask you this question. So are you, how, obviously tech media founder, how well versed are you in the technical kind of, how deep have you gone yourself in the tech side of the business?
Pretty deep from a theory perspective. I mean, am I sitting there writing out code? No, we're not. I'm obviously not a technical founder. I don't write code. I don't need to. However, we've gotten really technical from like a product design perspective, UX, UI, understanding the user experience, like different features and functions, being able to speak the tech language and tech lingo. Like we're a small team and we're very collaborative. And so we're in a room all day, every day with developers and product designers and product managers. And so, you know, there is definitely a clear distinction between product folks and developers. But like really, I would say I'm somewhere in the middle, which is like being able to speak both languages, teetering on the side of product.
Obviously going to a level which requires you to obviously know what you need to know, but not going too far, which will take too much of your time. Obviously you hired your CTO. How would life be without your CTO? Would you be able to do what you're doing without the CTO, or is it essential that a CTO is needed?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely need a CTO. It's like any tech company. You can't you can't have a functional business without a CTO. Like there's no way. I guess you could maybe get away with having a director of engineering and then a bunch of developers, but the CTO is like the vision of the tech product. And, essentially, unless you know how to write code, it's fundamentally impossible, at least in the industry that I'm in, to be able to solve technical challenges. Our industry, because it's so green, it's not like other industries where there's a blueprint for everything. What we're doing is like the first of its kind, that nobody has done it before. And so we have to get really creative about like, well, how is this even possible? Like, how can we, scrape Spotify to provide XYZ data if they're not even providing it publicly? And how do we report on loyal listeners when it's never been done? Or how do we do one-click publishing with YouTube when it's never been done? Like, how do we do things that's never been done before? And so, when you're at other companies, sometimes you just...
How do you come to that? How do you work out, what's never been done? How do you get there?
Yeah, it's a lot of troubleshooting. It's literally like our co-host team on meetings every day, walking through all of the honestly, I give all of the credit to my CTO. He is a really innovative problem solver / self-starter. And he can just, think about all the possible scenarios and like, what's the impossible? Let's try to make it possible. And like every time we hit a roadblock, we find like a new workaround for it. And eventually we get there. And like everything is possible. You just have to like be creative enough to solve those challenges. And he's actually an entrepreneur by background. So I think that's where it really helps. Like before, I actually knew him when I knew him from my network. He was the founder and CTO of another tech travel startup. And so he already has that startup mentality where it's just like, we don't have all the answers. We have to figure it out. He's not a developer or monkey. He's just pumping out code. Like he's out there, like looking at, a lot of research has to go into this. And I would say the other thing is his like technical expertise paired with my network. So my network has been super valuable in every time we hit a roadblock or a challenge. If we really can't move forward, I'll usually know somebody in my network or industry that I can tap into for support. So, recently we were doing something on our product front and we like hit a roadblock, and I had to call in the ex head of product at Spotify he's no longer there, but he's a friend of mine, and he like walked us through some technical challenges and ways that we could troubleshoot. And similarly, like, anytime we hit a roadblock, I'll like find the resources to support us and walk us through it. So sometimes we don't have the answers and we have to look externally. So I think his technical expertise with my network, and it really is a good combination.
Two really quick questions because time is running out. Just to finish here, what trends do you see emerging in this industry in the next couple of years? Do you see any more kind of trends emerging, or is it pretty much set paces as it's going to be?
No, I definitely think there's going to be a bunch of trends that come through. I mean, one of them is definitely, I think content creators are going to continue dabbling in video. And then my hypothesis is they're going to realize for podcasting, there's no need. One question that we're getting a lot this year is, should we be recording video? Should we be shooting our recordings? Should we be capturing the video content? And my hypothesis is to do it at a high level, high quality videos. The ROI might not necessarily be there from a conversion standpoint. And generally we find that podcast consumers seek out audio content because of the audio format, so that they can listen to podcasts however they want, whenever they want, when they're commuting to work, when they're walking their dog, when they're washing their dishes. And when you have video, it takes away from that. So sometimes they genuinely just want the audio format. So my hypothesis is people are going to continue dabbling with video and then eventually think about streamlining it to just audio.
Make it perfect. Concentrate.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell me, with co-host, where is co-host going? Where do you want co-host to go?
Yeah, so essentially what we want co-host to go is what we're really focusing on is like being that full service data analytics and audience growth tool for podcasters. So any smart podcaster who wants to take their show to the next level, if you want to understand if your show is successful, if the ROI is there, and if you're attracting the right listeners, you can come to our platform for all of that information. And two, if you are looking to grow your audience organically, we can support you with that. So our long-term goal is really to be one vendor that can support you with all of those needs, rather than having to go through procurement for recording and then audiograms and then smart links. You can do it all from our platform.
What is the advice? You've obviously so successful so far with what you're doing. What is the one bit of advice you wish someone told you before you started out doing what you're doing, which would have made your life so much easier?
Yes, something I think I've gotten better at in my 30s, something that I wish I knew in my 20s, is that being in sales, being a founder, being in really any role where you are trying to excel and forge your way, it's an emotional roller coaster. There are really good days and there are really bad days, and not to take that rejection personally. I've gotten really good at that now. Being in sales, you're so used to all the no's in the door just being slammed in your face. And I think that in my 20s, I definitely took that very personally, and every rejection was like such a personal blow against me. And now I approach my sales quotas analytically. I think about the fact that it's impossible to simply command your ducks to line up. You have to work purposefully towards it. And, at the end of the day, now I would say that the fear of rejection is no longer there. And I'm more analytical with everything that I do. And if it's a no, then it's just a not today, and another opportunity will open. And it always does. Yesterday I had two clients, or two new business prospects, say no to us because they decided that they didn't want to launch a podcast anymore. But we had one come through that said yes. And I was, I got the two blows in the morning, and it was like, okay, it is what it is. It happens. And by the end of the day, one person said yes. And, there's ebbs and flows with every, it's like a sine curve. There's ebbs and flows with every business, and a new day brings a new set of challenges, and you just can't take that home with you.
Hey guys, it's me again. If you enjoyed this episode of the show, be sure to press the thumbs up button below. And also, whilst you're there, hit subscribe. Otherwise, you can miss out on all of our interesting content we've got coming your way in the near future. Okay, guys, take care and see you soon.